Good morning. If you don't know me, my name is Glenn, and I have the awesome privilege of leading the team. And happy Mother's Day to all of those. If you have a mother, would you please stand? If you have a mother or had a mother, please stand. We're going to pray. Father, thank you so much for the moms who loved us, cared for us, brought us into this world. Thank you so much for who they are and what they have done and how you work through that incredible relationship of mother to son and daughter. Father, we just pray that your blessing would be on all moms everywhere today and tomorrow and the next day. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. So my brother came to visit me. I was at my summer job. Summer job was lifeguarding. I thought two things. I wanted to be out in the sun and be able to look at girls. And so that and get paid for it was just like a bonus. So that's what I was doing. I was at the swimming tennis club, and I was lifeguarding. I was opening up, and my brother came, and he was all sweaty, and I said, "Did you run?" And I didn't even know he ran. And he said, "Yeah, I ran today." And I said, "Oh, well, our high school was not too far away." I said, "Did you run at the high school?" And he said, "No, I actually ran here from my apartment." He had just been married. He'd been married for about 6 months. I said, "You ran from your apartment? That's like 12 Ks." He goes, "Yeah, I just decided to run." And I said, "Oh, okay." Well, he ran, and I said, "Well, is Rita, your wife, is she going to pick you back up?" He goes, "No, I don't think she's going to pick me up." And I said, "Okay, are you thinking about running back? That's like you're doing a half marathon." He goes, "No, I was going to actually ask you if I could borrow your car and go home." And I said, "What's up with this? Did you decide to run a little bit longer?" He said, "Yeah, I did." And, long and the short of it, I sensed that there was something not so kosher. And I'm only 17, so what do I know? So I said, "So why did you start running? I didn't even know you ran." He said, "Well, to be truthful, Rita and I had our first argument." And I said, "Oh, really?" And not because, I'm 17, so I wasn't really schooled in the art of love and war. So I just flat out asked him, like, "Well, what'd you argue about?" And he said, "Cereal." I said, "Cereal?" And I'm thinking to myself, I'm 17. I'm supposed to not be mature, and you're older because you're like really old because you're in your 20s, and that like cereal. Are you serious? He said, "Yeah, I know. It kind of sounds funny." I go, "No, it sounds stupid." And so he started talking to me about how it went. And so quickly it was like a casual conversation about cereal. "Hey, is this the only box of cereal that we have?" And she said, "Yeah, it's the only box." She said, "Why?" "Well, because, I don't know. Can I ask you why you chose to buy this box of cereal?" She goes, "Well, it was pretty inexpensive." And he said, "Yeah, you're right there." And then all of a sudden it starts to escalate. She said, "Well, what kind of cereal do you want?" And he said, "I don't know, one that actually has taste." And then and you can just see where this kind of then goes. And then fires back, "Well, how about at the end of your day, you actually stop at the store, you go through a shopping list, and you pick the cereal that you want." And he goes, "Well, you don't need to get all upset about it. I'm just asking about cereal." And you could see where this thing goes. It starts to escalate, and it gets to the place where, "Do you not like the choices that I make in this life?" That kind of thing. It's just like out of sight. So they went from a casual conversation to a crucial one. A crucial conversation. A crucial conversation, and it'll come up on the board to give you a kind of a glossary of terms. The crucial conversation, according to the experts, involves three aspects. One, it involves two varying opinions. Two varying opinions. Cereal. I like it. I don't like it. Buy a different one. And then all of a sudden, emotions get strong. They run strong. They start to really take on some serious oomph in our kind of our hearts and our souls. And then all of a sudden, then the third thing is, in a crucial conversation, not only do opinions vary, not only do emotions run strong, but the stakes are high. Now, obviously, the stakes are high in any kind of relationship. So this isn't a series about husband and wife. This is a series about any and all relationships that have to actually involve communication, which really is every relationship. The three most important things, if you ask a real estate person, of what are the three most important things about real estate, they'll say location, location, location. If you ask me what are the three most important things about relationships, I would say communication, communication, and communication. Why? Because at the very heart of communication, no pun intended, is actually the heart. That what comes out of our mouth is actually, it originates in our heart. Jesus said it this way: out of the overflow of your heart, the mouth speaks. Now, we're not only just talking about the verbal words, but all communication. In fact, 90% of our communication is actually nonverbal. Just the subtle eye roll. Or the eye wink. How you doing? What's your name? How you doing? See? Different things. Two different eye rolls can communicate two different things. So communication is really something that actually originates in the heart. In this series that we're going to dive into, we're going to actually take a look at what I'm going to call David dialogues. Looking at David and all of the different relationships and the cast of characters that he had to encounter in his kind of narrative that we find in both 1st and 2nd Samuel. And the first one we're going to take a look at is one with his older brother, siblings. If you're an only child, just think about what you missed. You don't have an older brother who would love to do certain things, particularly if they're older brothers. They just love to let you know that you are smaller, you are little, and that you are actually insignificant. My brother taught me for the first 5 years that I was actually adopted. So, and my dad found me in a rolled up newspaper by a manhole cover and felt sorry for me and brought me home. And I believed it lock, stock, and barrel. Oh, the older brothers. So we're going to take a look at the older brother. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you a glossary of terms that will help us not only for this morning, but also for the rest of this series. Chapter 17, beginning at verse 19. Now Saul, who was king, and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose early in the morning, and he left the sheep with the keeper and took the provisions and went, as Jesse, his father, had commanded him. So David's on a mission to take provisions, supplies to his older brothers who were on the front. And he came to the encampment as the host was going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. They must be rugby players. And Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things, his supplies, in charge of the keeper of the baggage. I want you to remember that phrase, the keeper of the baggage. And ran to the ranks, and he went and he greeted his brothers. And he talked with them, and behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came out of the ranks of the Philistines, and he spoke the same words as before. And I want you to skip down to verse 26. And David said to the men who stood by him, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel?" He's seeing that taking away the reproach is the actual goal. That's what he wants. That's the goal. Remember that. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way, so shall it be done to the man who kills him. So what they had said was, the man who goes out and faces and kills will actually get the king's daughter in marriage. So now you've got royal ties. And the king will make you exempt and your family exempt from paying taxes. What a beautiful thing that is. I, as an American, living here, get to pay taxes here and in America. If I'm going to die, I'd actually think I'd rather die going for not being able to pay taxes, particularly in two countries. So those are the benefits. Now, let me go to some of the glossary of terms before we get into the exchange with older brother. The glossary of terms. I already told you about a crucial conversation. It involves opinion, emotion, and stakes. The other thing that happens when you get into a crucial conversation is there's usually three variables that happen when you get in. The three variables are spontaneous, meaning that it actually oftentimes you find yourself suddenly going from a casual conversation, we're just chatting, to all of a sudden somebody ups the game and boom, somebody puts an opposing opinion on the table. And it happens spontaneously. And then it also happens, the second variable, it happens in real time. It's not like you can calculate this thing. And it's not like in the movies, you know how you can freeze? And it's like you'll see in the movies, like in the superhero movies, they'll freeze and everybody will freeze except for the superhero who can continue to go. And then all of a sudden they unfreeze and they're back in real time. We don't get a chance to do the freeze moment when we get into a crucial conversation. We'd love to, but it happens. Happens spontaneously, happens in real time. And then the other thing that is a variable is not many of us have actually seen, either in a work setting, in a family setting, in a friendship setting, or in a marital setting, where we get to see people who effectively communicate in a very healthy way. When they get into a crucial conversation, we actually lack, most of us, if not all of us, we lack some really healthy role models of how to actually do this when we get into a crucial conversation. So we don't have tons of experience on seeing how to do it well. So then I'm going to skip down, and there's one last thing in terms of a glossary term that I want to talk about, is when you get into this crucial conversation and the opinions vary and the emotions rise and the stakes are high. Let me ask you a question. What usually happens? One of two things, and the experts call this the fool's choice. You will either make the fool's choice of attacking and actually turning that person into an enemy. And you will be about not the solution, removing the reproach from Israel. That's the solution. That's the goal. You'll be about, personally, I want to win this argument, or punish the other person, or 3, keep the peace. And that sounds nice, but it really actually isn't. Keeping the peace means I'm just going to go silent. I'm going to avoid you because I don't want to deal with your stuff. And you walk away just to keep the peace because you avoid confrontation. So we're going to take a look. Look back with me in verse 28. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And all of a sudden, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why have you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? Accusation. And I know your presumption, and I know the evil of your heart. For you have come down to see the battle. Eliab makes the fool's choice. He thinks his brother has stepped out of line. So there's three quick things that I want you to see about what Eliab does and how he goes on the attack. The first thing is he fires the U shots. The U shots. You ever been in a conversation and all of a sudden you start firing the U shots? In the course of 3 short verses, he says you or your 5 times. You have come down here. Who have you left those few sheep with? I know your heart. I know the evil in your heart. I know you came down just to see a battle. You're showing off. And you know, when you when you pull out of the holster the gun that starts to fire the U-shot bullets, oftentimes they're actually injected with high explosive superlatives. Not only is it just you, but let's fire in the words always or never. You always. You never. You are the most. You never will amount to anything. We go to the absolute extremes, and they are not just you shots to knock somebody back and even actually knock them down so that they don't even know where you're coming from. They're also then injected with these high explosive superlatives. Do you ever been in a conversation and all of a sudden, because they're not accurate, and when you start doing the you're actually missing the point. And now all of a sudden it's accusation, and it's getting personal, and you're starting to slowly move away from the solution and from what the goal is. And now you're into personal attack, and you're injecting it with just unbelievable exaggerations. You always. Nobody is always. And nobody is never, but we use it. Did you ever do that? Eliab he's in the mode of making the fool's choice. The second thing that he does is he does a knee-jerk reaction. I see you're coming down here. I think you're showing off. You're just trying to showboat in front of all of my friends and everybody here, and he does a knee-jerk reaction. See, what happens is if you start moving away from the solution or what it is that is on the table that both people disagree or both groups disagree with, then all of a sudden you begin to get in reaction mode versus response mode. Do you know why that is? Physiologically, do you know that there is actually a chemical response that goes on in your body? Physiologically, you have these 2 tiny little glands that kind of sit right above your kidneys, right back here. And when you and I sense threat, when you and I sense danger, God wired us for one of 2 responses: to either fight or flight. To make like Tom and Cruise and get out of there, or if you're more biblical, make like a shepherd and get the flock out of here. So that's, I got to get going. But when you start to do this in the midst of a conversation, a crucial conversation, the fight and flight mode still comes out. Emotions run strong. And you either fight, that's the fool's choice, or you will flight and you'll try to keep the peace because you just don't like confrontation. And that's also the fool's choice. The third thing that Eliab does, and I'm just trying to give you biblically in this dialogue what's going on and try to pull out some of the practical stuff that you and I are so familiar with. Maybe you had an argument on the way here. Maybe it was about cereal. I don't know. Maybe there was a discussion in your office this past week where one group of people are saying we need to step out and risk, and we need to do some capital venture. We need to invest. We need to just go for it right now. And the other group's going, no, we don't. We need to reinvest our capital, and we need to get stronger with what we are. We're not in a position to invest in other things. We can't take that risk. And all of a sudden, we got varying opinions. Emotions begin to rise, and the stakes are high. The third thing that he does is that he's the keeper of baggage. Are you a keeper of baggage? Yes, you are, because I am too. We all have been known to keep our little bit of bag of things that we hold and we carry with us. And it didn't take long for Eliab to carry his bag and throw it down in the midst of this public situation. Did you notice how he did this? He didn't take on his brother David in a private way. Hey, David, let's duck behind this tent. I want to talk to you about something. That would have been actually kind and respectful and honoring. No. See, he had lost the plot. He wasn't about the solution, about taking away the reproach from Israel. He was about a personal attack. And why was he? Perhaps, and this is just speculation on my part, but if you go back one chapter, in chapter 16, when Samuel was commanded by God to go and anoint the next king of Israel, one of the sons of Jesse, Samuel shows up into Bethlehem. Here's Jesse. He said, I need to see your sons. And sure enough, in very Middle Eastern fashion, when you need to see sons, who do you show first? You bring out your oldest, your eldest son. And here comes Eliab. And the description of Eliab was not only positionally was he the oldest, which really held weight in this culture, but he also, the author of Samuel says, oh man, he looked the part. He had the outward appearance, and he had the physical stature. He was like the man. You know, like some of you ladies are looking for, the man. And God says, not him. And Samuel's kind of having a private conversation, but he really looks the part. I mean, he's the oldest. I mean, he's the most experienced. I mean, he's the man. God says, no, I look not the way man looks. Man looks at the outward appearance. I look at the heart. One by one, he goes all through. He gets through 6 sons and not one. And he goes, Jesse, do you have any more? He goes, yeah, I got one. He's the runt. He's out watching the sheep. He's like a teenager. You don't want him. Call him. God says, that's him. He's a man after my own heart. And perhaps in Eliab's bag, his keeper of baggage was the fact that he had great disappointment, possibly even resentment, that he got passed over to be the next king in light of his baby brother. And he carries it into the conversation. Let me just tell you something. Being a keeper of baggage, if you leave it unresolved, it's going to come out. Why? Because you can't control your mouth? No, because it's in your heart. I've had conversations with some people just in the last 5 months, the first 5 months of this year, and I can't tell you how many men and people talk about, they're just so frustrated. And I just dig a little bit deeper and ask some questions, and all of a sudden what comes out is actually disappointment. Particularly guys in their 40s. They're like, I'm kind of disappointed. Is this what I signed up for? I'm doing everything that I was told I was supposed to do, and then I'm just so disappointed. And they're lugging their disappointment around. And guess what? When they lug their disappointment around, it comes out mainly on the people that are closest to them. Are you lugging around some disappointment? You know what disappointment means? It's dissatisfaction of unrealized expectations. Are you lugging around? I thought I was going to do this. I had this dream. I thought it was going to be this. I thought my career path was going to go this. I thought this relationship was going to take this path. Disappointment. And you lug it around. I think Eliab was lugging around his disappointment. And it only took a little bit of a spark, and boom, his anger was kindled. This is not about just what comes out of your mouth, because what comes out of your mouth is attached to what's in your heart. And unresolved baggage is a dangerous thing. So now we move on. Now we move on to a healthy choice that David makes. David makes the healthy choice. The first thing that he does is he doesn't react, he responds. Eliab, he reacted. He did the knee jerk. David responds. How does David respond? Look at how he responds. He asks two clarifying questions. He goes like this in verse 29. David said, "What have I done now? Was it not but a word?" Two questions. What have I done now? Explain. Add some accurate and relevant information to this process so that we can get back to the solution. And was it not just but a word that I shared? He asked two clarifying questions. And the reason why he asked two clarifying questions is it's just an incredible thing to help us not react, but to respond. Because when you respond, you actually are still staying about the goal. So David is somebody who responds. The first thing he doesn't go into the trigger trap. He doesn't go back to, okay, you fired the U bullets, now I'm going to fire back. How about you jealous older brother? You're just absolutely bitter because I got picked and you didn't. He doesn't go that route. When somebody starts giving you the U shots, will you respond by firing back? He doesn't. He avoids the U trigger trap. The second thing that he does is that he stays on point. He's about the solution, and he doesn't let it get personal. He's not about, I'm going to win this argument with my older brother in front of everybody because he just shamed me. I'm not going to be about punishing. I think that's what Eliab was about. I'm going to punish you publicly. I'm going to shame you and embarrass you and basically accuse you of being a show-off. And by the way, when he says the last thing, I know your heart and it's evil, it's like, no, he doesn't. That's how far we can go sometimes in our conversation. Like, you don't know somebody's heart. Only God does. For him to go there, he was literally grabbing and throwing every verbal hand grenade that he could. You're evil. Oof. David doesn't get trapped by it. He stays on point. And the third thing that David does in a healthy way, making the healthy choice and not getting caught in the fool's choice, is he sees that the entire battle is fundamentally spiritual in nature. It's not personal. This isn't about you and me, Eliab. This isn't about a family quarrel. This isn't about you being passed over and me being anointed. This is about how do we take away the reproach from Israel. This is about a giant who's calling us out, and he's defying the armies of God. And I'm not about my own personal image. I'm about the honor of God. And see, when we get into these crucial conversations, you know what happens? We get about our own image. And we have to defend our own image, don't we? You made me look bad? Well, then I'm going to make you look worse. It's not about an image thing for David. It's about an identity thing. I am about God. and his honor and the honor of his people. So let me conclude by saying, how in the world do you and I, and remember, we're going to be going through this series and we're going to give you a lot of how-tos, but I want you to hear first and foremost today, this message and this entire series is not about changing your language, changing the way you speak. That's indirect. This is a series about your heart. Because out of the heart and the overflow, the mouth speaks. So if you think, okay, I'm going to get some tips on how to be an effective communicator, if I'm going to get some how-tos on how to negotiate better, you're missing the point. Because everything begins with starting with your heart. You need to do some self-examination of your own heart. Because heart, in the biblical understanding of what heart is, it means the sum total of your thoughts, the sum total of your motives, the sum total of your intentions. It's the sum total and the core of who you are. And out of that, we speak. So when we talk about a communication series, we really need to be talking about your heart. So let me just finish with talking about the heart. David had two things that will be really helpful. David had a deep desire, and he had a ruling passion. David was a man who understood that the words of his life were centered on a heart that was fixed on God. So David's deepest desire, Psalm 19, verse 14. Listen to this. Here's his deepest desire. Is this yours? Is this mine? Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, the sum total of all that I think, all that I intend, all that I am motivated by, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing and acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. He's saying that I want my heart and my words to not be disconnected. I want them to actually be one, and that they would both be acceptable and pleasing, to be honoring to you. That's his deepest desire. And out of that deep desire comes his ruling passion. Psalm 27, verse 4. One thing I ask of you, O Lord. One thing I seek after. To dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And here it is, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. Now, can I ask you a question? It's a great psalm. It's a great song. It was written by David. People sang it in worship, going to worship. But what does it mean to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord? Is that just flowery fluff poetry? No, what it means is this, and I'll conclude. It means when you fix your eyes, when your heart is all about saying, I'm seeking you, my ruling passion is worship, devotion of you. And when I gaze upon your beauty, you can't gaze on the outward appearance of God because God is spirit. So what does he mean? To gaze upon the beauty of the Lord means to gaze upon his nature. He is all-knowing. He is all-powerful. He is all-present. To gaze upon the beauty of God and get your heart centered in worship means to understand that God is a God of character and attributes. And you could just gaze upon the beauty of God's love, and you could just stop there, and you could be there for the next 1,000,000 days of your life. God's love, it's beautiful. It's sacrificial. It's unconditional. Keeps no records of wrongs. It's kind. It's never rude. You could just keep going. And so when you have your desire to have your heart and your words lined up. And when your ruling passion of your life is to bring your heart and center it on God, you gaze upon Him, then and only then will the words that come out of your mouth be different. I can't wait to see what God's going to do. And I can't wait to see the fruit of our lips because of the fruit that has taken place in the heart. So you got 2 challenges this week. 1, can you start, instead of firing back, just ask some clarifying questions. Did you mean this? I'm not sure I really understand exactly what you're saying. Help me, I really want to know. And don't do it in a condescending way, but start asking questions. You know, Jesus was the master of answering a question with a question. And when his opponents came at him to trap him, and by the way, his opponents weren't just like, we disagree with you, we don't like what you're teaching, we don't like how people are following you. His opponents had murderous thoughts. We want to kill you. So when they came to him and said something like this, hey, Jesus, is it lawful to pay taxes? What did Jesus do? Answered it with a question. Does anybody have a coin? That's question number 1. Whose inscription's on this? They answer, Caesar. Then he answers. He doesn't get personal. 2 clarifying questions. Then render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render to God that which is God's. If we can start doing that. And the other thing, the other personal challenge, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face, will you be men and women who were willing to spend daily time getting your heart aligned and fixed on God's heart? And when you do, you will then get to see the beauty of his character, his nature, his attributes, and it will impact your heart. And out of the overflow of a heart impacted by God's beautiful character and nature, you'll speak. Let's stand and pray. Father, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for the truth of your word. Thank you that even in your word, that is, this account was probably 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And yet we're marveling at how absolutely accurate and relevant it is to us today. I just marvel at your word. God, you're a God who doesn't go silent. In fact, this communication series is only because you spoke and you said, let there be light. The whole thing got started with you speaking. But the one who speaks is the one that we want to gaze upon, because your heart and the very core and the sum total of your character, your nature, and your attributes are so beautiful for us to behold. And we want our hearts to be aligned with yours. May you bless each one of us with a new desire. Let the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable to you, God. And may we have a ruling passion that is absolutely in line with saying one thing, to gaze upon your beauty. And all God's people said, amen.